Lep pozdrav vsem in dobrodošli na virtualnem dogodku Klipinga. Če bi mi januarja kdo rekel, da bom v poslovnih prostorih Klipinga gostila dogodek z nekaj 10 udeleženci, bi ga vprašala po zdravju. No, danes se dogaja točno to. Da vas lahko pozdravim v poslovnih prostorih Klipinga. Tukaj smo mi doma, malo da dobite občutek, divna vam maha. Te pisarne so zdaj sicer prazne, so pa bolj polne v jutranjih urah, ko je na vrhuncu naše delo z pripravo zbirk objav za naše naročnike. Svet se je torej spremenil in to korenito. In zato smo se tudi mi odločili, da danes o teh spremembah malo globlje pobrskamo, dobimo malo lokalnega pogleda, pa malo tudi globalnega pogleda. In ker delamo virtualno, si lahko privoščimo nekaj stvari, ki si jih prej nismo mogli. Lahko si privoščimo, da imamo danes, da gostimo zelo posebno gostjo. To je Johno Burke. Johna, I just introduced you. Just say hi to everyone. Johno Burke je globalna izvršna direktorica AMEC-a. AMEC je krovna organizacija na področju vrednotenja in merjenja učinkov komuniciranja in Johna je v tej svoji vlogi zelo dobro spremlja, kaj se dogaja po celem svetu, kako komunikatorji iz različnih kontinentov celo gledajo in razmišljajo o tem, kakšno bo njihovo življenje po tej krizi. Torej nam da lahko zelo dober globalni pogled v to, kar se dogaja. Johna je trenutno v Arizoni, kjer je ura 6 zjutraj. Johna, I just said you are in Arizona right now, where it's 6 o'clock in the morning. That's why we are especially grateful. And when the whole thing is over and you come to Slovenia, there will be payback time. I promise. Okay? Torej, Johna je z nami v Arizoni, kupica nas je tukaj v Sloveniji. Ampak preden gremo govoriti o tem, kaj se dogaja lokalno, pa kaj se dogaja globalno, bi rada, da vas pozdravi Divna Brkič-Hendriks, direktorica Klipinga, vsi jo dobro poznate, Divna, izvoli.
Zdravo, živijo, koliko nas pa je, Martina?
30 trenutno.
Enkrat. Ekipa, zdravo, mi z Martino se zabavamo že dobri 2 uri, ljubiva to tehnologijo, to, kar dela in to, kar ne dela. Sem poslala v univerzum sporočilo sam, da se dobro slišimo in da se bomo imeli fajn. Jaz bom v backstageu Martini pomagala, mislim, da bo to delovalo sinhrono. Vsem najlepša hvala, ker ste se prijavili in sem res blazno hvaležen, v bistvu res zelo navdušena, da smo se vsi mi tako hitro prilagodili na nov način komunikacije in da imamo ta nek odnos, kakršenkoli je virtualen, ampak vsem se vidimo in da šeramo to znanje in nadaljujemo. Jaz pa komaj čakam, da vas vse skupaj še v živo vidim. Ekipa, prevzemi.
No, Divna, je ista, virtualno ali pa realno, to ste zdaj videli. Sigurno pa bo še kakšen realen dogodek, če neč drugega, pa vsaj na kakšni kavi se v že kakšni kombinaciji najdemo. Preden gremo mi pogledati ta globalni pogled na spremembe, ki nam jih prinaša koronakriza, bi jaz rada majčkeno potipala vaš puls. In vas bom prosila, da ali vzamete telefone, če jih imate pri roki, lahko pa tudi na računalniku to naredite in tega ste od Klipinga že navajeni, da vas vedno tudi mi kaj vprašamo in nam boste odgovorili na par vprašanj. Sam trenutek, da vam pokažem, kje se to naredi. Vidite vsi moj screen in mi prosim odgovorite na vprašanje, kako mislite, da bo koronakriza spremenila komunikacijsko industrijo. Greste na www.pikamenti.com in vtipkate kodo 13 93 87. In ko boste to naredili, bomo mi tudi že kar videli, kaj se dogaja z odgovori. Johna, because you don't understand Slovenian yet, you will one day, I'm sure, at least those most important words. Here I am asking our participants to tell us how corona crisis will change communications industry. And there are 3 answers. The first one is for the better. The second one is for the worst or no impact. And so far there is a really big majority saying that our industry is changing for the better. This is just an input for you when I'm going to be asking you similar questions with a global perspective, just so you have a little bit of an impression that in Slovenia, people are looking at this from a very positive perspective.
Love the optimism.
Yeah, me too. Hvala vsem, ki odgovarjate. Zanimivo je, da nimamo niti enega odgovora, ki bi rekel na slabše. In to nam zelo veliko pove o tem, kakšen mindset je v tej naši panogi. Zelo sem vesela, da to slišam še posebej zato, ker ko človek odpre kakršenkoli medij, pravzaprav dobivamo malo drugačno sliko, manj pozitivno. Super. Zdaj pa gremo kar naprej. Hvala vsem, ki ste odgovorili. Vas že kar vabim, da mi poveste še odgovor na naslednje vprašanje. In sicer, tokrat pa je odprto vprašanje, povejte mi, kaj je tista največja sprememba, ki se obeta naši industriji po koronakrizi. Preprosto vpišete besedo ali pa besede, ki se vam zdijo tukaj ključne in dobili bomo en tak besedni oblak iz vaših odgovorov, kjer me prav zanima, kaj se bo zgodilo. Johno, here we are talking about the key words. What will be marking this industry? What will be the biggest change in this industry after the corona crisis? And I will be translating the words as they come along. We have 33 participants right now. It's not a representative sample, but it's a very good insight into what are the top of mind things when we say communications industry and corona crisis.
Great.
Vabim vas, da odgovorite. Ta anketa je popolnoma anonimna, tako da lahko ste tudi si privoščite mogoče kakšen humor, lahko si privoščite biti kreativni, vsak odgovor je dober. So far, Johno, we have directness, we have the number of providers, the number of vendors. Digital is the word that I'm sure you understand. It's quite big. That means that a lot of people are using. Clarity, interesting. Better responsiveness is one word that we see in this word cloud. Personal relations, interesting. In all those digitalization, clarity and personal relationships are also important. Technology is appearing in a couple of spots. There is fake news, not surprisingly, social network, online presence. So a big chunk is about digital, a big chunk is about clarity, but also a big chunk is about personal relationships. So these are our keywords for the discussion before. Digital, clarity, personal relationships. Very good. Hvala vsem, ki mi odgovarjate. Še imam za vas naslednje vprašanje. In sicer, kako pripravljeni se počutite vi osebno na te spremembe, ki jih vnaša korona kriza? Johno, here we are talking about how ready we are for the changes brought about by the corona crisis. And so far, the average based on less than 10 answers is 3.5. Of course, we have a typical bell curve here. Not surprisingly, I am very happy to see that there are some people who feel more ready. Very good. We have somebody who is less ready. I'm probably more towards this group. I became ready because the changes happened, but was not ready for it even in March. Okay, tukaj imamo tako tipičen primer statističnega povprečja in še eno vprašanje imam za vas. Spet tako osebno. Kaj bi se moralo zgoditi, da se vi osebno pomaknete eno stopničko navzgor? Zdaj, kar nekaj vas je bilo, ko ste se opredelili, oziroma par vas se je opredelilo na višek te skale. Kaj bi se moralo zgoditi, da greste iz 5 na 6 ali pa iz 4 do 5? Johno, here I am asking our participants to tell us what needs to happen for them in terms of readiness to go one notch above to what they said they are right now. And again, I'm waiting for open answers. Spet čakam vaše odprte odgovore. Vem, da je zelo težko vprašanje, zato osebno vprašanje tudi, zato bom hvaležna za vsak insight, ki ga tukaj dobim. In ta prvega, ki ga imamo, je agilno učenje. Johno, for you, the first answer came was agile learning, education, know-how. Very good. 3 odgovore že imamo. Dajmo zbrati še kakšnega, potem pa gremo naprej se pogovarjati. Adaptability or adaptiveness of our of our clients, more experiences, different allocation of time, digital tools, new technologies. What we see here, Johno, is a very diverse set of answers, but one big chunk is learning expressed in different ways, and one big chunk is tools. And maybe the next one is experience, which we will have. Also interesting, multi-generational team. Acceptance of changes, how we embrace them. Vsi tisti, ki mi odgovarjate v angleščini, super, tukaj že pomagate Johni, da bo dobila malo več vtisa, kaj se dogaja. Če bo še kdo odgovoril malo kasneje, nič hudega. Hvala vam za zdaj, zelo dober input v to razpravo, ki bo sledila. Education is a big one, Johna. One person wrote, more meditation and peace. Huh? How cool is that? I'd love that. Jaz bi tudi rada včasih bila malo bolj mirna in se mi zdi, da zdaj sem manj. Tako da kdorkoli je to napisal, bi se morala najti pa iti kdaj na kavo, bi kakšno več rekla na to temo. Najlepša hvala vsem, ker ste sodelovali. Jaz sem za vas vprašanja izčrpala in grem zdaj k Johni. So Johno, I gave you a little bit of an insight what our participants are thinking in terms of what will help them be better in the changing industry after Corona times. A lot of them are talking about agile learning. They're talking about digital tools. Some of them are talking also about what is the mileage. We have heard that we are quite ready for that, and very optimistic bunch of people here where they were telling us how ready they how the Corona will change the industry. The big majority said it would change it for the better. Now, questions for you. If we did the same survey among the global members of AMEC, how different or same would the results be?
I think the results would actually be very similar. I think everyone is on this progression of where they are in both in the COVID crisis itself, right? Of where their region is in handling and managing the illnesses on top of their business. And so I think there is that very clear bell curve of where everyone is and then what that progression is. I think there is consistently a lot of optimism for on the other side of this and what this will do. I think we will see a revolution of great thinking that will come from this out of necessity, just like so many of the great revolutions do, right? And I think there will be more confidence and trust in communication. I think when, one of the sayings in the US was communicators are looking for a seat at the table, right? Of the C-suite is what that meant. And I think what that really means is now when the crisis strikes, one of the first people to be involved in an organization is communications. And that's because no matter what the strategy, if you aren't able to clearly express, convey, and communicate that, it will weaken your position, it will weaken your trust, it will weaken your relatability with your constituents and your stakeholders, and that will erode all of that value that you've built up if you aren't managing a crisis effectively.
Mm-hmm. So something that we all have been craving for, and this requiring a seat at the table is not just in US, this is very, very present where we come from. This is a good chance for the communicators, but do we need to think about anything in particular to grab this opportunity and finally get the seat we deserve?
I think that the news is a poor key indicator for us on so many levels, right? Because we talk about fake news and all of these distractions potentially. But I think in the situation of this crisis particularly, talking about data and talking about model data and what the data is telling us has been empowering to the messaging. It's been frustrating in some cases, right? Because we see that data isn't consistent from day to day. Data isn't consistent from region to region. And so understanding those nuances, creating that level set is really critical. But those communicators who aren't data driven but data led will be more effective will be more trusted, will be more strategic, and will be those people at the end of the day that will be the first call by the rest of the C-suite to say, where are we? What do we know? And what can we count on? And realizing that data is going to change, there is a trust in the feedback from those stakeholders and constituents that when you're making changes, when you're making shifts, according to what your market is telling you, there is a confidence that goes along with that. And if you're the holder to those keys for your organization, and you can then think strategically of what those next critical steps would be, I can assure you that there is no C-suite that wouldn't want you at their right-hand side in any crisis, along with the day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. In Slovenia, we would say, may your words become gold. This is a saying that we had, neka se vama riječi pozlate. This is more like a Balkan, our legacy saying. Still, I would like to maybe provoke you a little bit right here. So we now have the opportunity to get the seat at the table, and we can do that. We can even have it sustainably if we can embrace the data and use it at the right time. But right now, isn't it the best moment to invest? Isn't it the worst moment to invest in that? Because all of our management is telling us, now we don't have the resources. Now we have to be especially careful. And you're asking me to invest even more into something. How do we answer this kind of reaction from them? What should be our response?
If you have credible data and you can show them the value of what you're doing, it is the best investment that they can make, and they won't question that. I mean, that's the misconception. The misconception is when communications, and we'll talk specifically about external communications right now, when you're reporting on counts and amounts of things you've done, that has very little value, right? Because that has that so what factor. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, so what? When you are investing in information that can provide insights and value add to making smarter, more efficient strategic decisions for your organization, you better believe that your CFO will probably be the first one with their hand up supporting you if you are investing in good data that's providing insights into the market of how you're going to be more strategic, because that's seen as an investment. And you're going to be providing value and savings for your organization in the long run. If you're just doing counts and amounts of what you've done, you're right. It's going to be really hard to get more budget. If you're providing insights into your market, you will have a universal support from your organization, I think is what you'll find. And that will require the communications professional to think a little differently, perhaps, right? You need to be thinking critically of how are you surveying your market, right? There are a lot of great ways to do kind of a quick pulse check survey of, where are they? What is their next step? When do they look to have an appetite for your service or your product in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months? If you're asking very specific, meaningful questions and people want to see your organization on the other side of a crisis, they will open and be welcome to helping you. And so it's a matter of being smart with how you're looking to acquire those insights. And then once you have the insights, applying the findings so that they see that they aren't just, taking time in a vacuum, but they are taking time and seeing those incremental changes and and opportunity and boost based on the feedback that they're providing you. I think that's where, the really good relationships between organizations are tested. It isn't just the megaphone of here's our message, but it is that two-way communication that you can open and that you can facilitate with those stakeholders that build that bond. And they'll tell you, gosh, you guys really missed the mark on this. Like, we're not going to abandon you, but we want to see you do better. And here's what better means. And that's where you've got a really good relationship with the stakeholders that you can rely on and that you can trust.
One abbreviation that I heard and I thought was so relevant, and I think it's relevant even for the people who are measuring a lot and who are already investing in that, and it's fear of finding out. So if I wasn't very elaborate or sophisticated with my measurement, then there's a very large gray zone. So I can do something and then I can rely on people patting me on the shoulders saying that was a great job. But without the data, nobody can really discuss that well. So if I measure something, what if the data shows that I'm not doing the good job? Do you think this is a problem just with me and I'm very biased, or this is something that you see in different regions or in even the organizations who are very successful? Talk a little bit more about how to overcome this fear of finding out.
So I will provoke you right back, and I challenge the faux, the fear of finding out, that it is more the faux foo, the fear of fouling up. Because I think in communications especially, right, there is a drive to perfection. There is a drive to clarity and to all of those things. And data can sometimes tell you people didn't care. No one noticed, nothing happened. And so it is that fear of failure that I think is more debilitating than the finding out, because we're all naturally very curious, you know, we're all naturally stalking our competitors. So finding out isn't the scary part. It's the messing up is the scary part. And I think that comes from a lack of understanding that your CEO hasn't become the CEO by being perfect. Your CEO has become the CEO by learning from failure. Failure is perhaps our greatest teacher. And if you have a fear of that, if you are intimidated by that, and you don't take that as a challenge to go in and say, oh, okay, why did we fail? How can we do better? How do we avoid failure in the future? And use that for incremental growth. That's the only limiting factor that you have. And so the finding out, we're all naturally nosy. We want to find out. We want to know everything about our competitors. So that isn't the challenge. It's the fear of fouling up and saying, oh, look, this is pointing to something that you did wrong. That would be intimidating unless you use a good partner. And I think Clipping is one of those good partners proven out in awards entries, in best practices, to be able to give you that layer of critical insight of, here's why this didn't work. Here's why we saw this dip. Here's why we saw this different algorithm, or we saw something change. There were external factors. There were internal factors. You know, if you're doing a press release for a new product at the same time that your CEO is being investigated for fraud, there's going to be problems. So your data is going to look skewed. If you don't have the context to lay over that, to provide insight of other variables that are going on in a market, then it is somewhat limiting, and it does devalue what you're trying to do and how you're trying to communicate and navigate through those changes.
I think, Johno, what you're saying really touches upon what we got in the word cloud, where we were asking people, what do you need right now? What's interesting right now? And a lot of them were saying things like agile learning, education, having the know-how. This is going to be way too general question, but let's say I watched this webinar and I was, okay, I have to start measuring. And you talked about the quick fixes before. Do you have any best practices that you can share? Something that is not so difficult to do and really helps me to make this first step and starting a different kind of discussion with our CEO. And this is the discussion, not what we're going to do, but what is sensible to do right now. Anything that would be, and I know this is hard, but I still have to do it because I'm always going for those to give our participants something really concrete.
Sure. So I think one of the most critical things that people can do now is in the planning primer that we launched in November. Planning is important, right? Understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And there is a great model to help people in their planning, and it's called the play model. So the P is the problem. You know, what are your organization's and communications objectives, and what needs to change and why? The L is look look at your audience, right? Who are they? How do they behave now? Why? How will their behavior change? Why? The A is ask. How will you earn their attention? What content and channel will be most effective? In which section of your stakeholders and why? So you're setting that roadmap. And the why is the yes, right? What does success look like? How will you know what you've done has been successful? And when you're looking at that play model and you're able to answer those questions and kind of roadmap all of those answers, when you go in with that conversation of here's what we've done, here's why we're looking to do what we're going to do, this is how this affects how we as an organization make and spend money, you will have the audience that you need and you will be given the resources that are going to support that. And the more you support that with data that is consistent with the research that you did, and I put a caveat here, a little asterisk, that you do that without bias, right? So you don't narrow things to such a small audience or market that you're losing some of those tangential things that are going on, because those can be indicators of shift, of change. And if you're so focused on what you know, then you can miss some really important elements. And so I would challenge everyone to look at everything that they're doing and to filter out the bias. You know, I have a circle of friends and we have, you know, and it's great when everyone agrees with everyone and we're all on the same page. But at the same time, that is scary to me, because I realize that, you know, there is a whole other opinion. There is a whole other audience out there that is in a difference of opinion. And I need to understand that too, if I'm going to be effective, because the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. There is always a balance, right? I love the meditation and the breathing. I mean, that is how we survive so much of this. And so understanding what that balance is, relating to the extremes, being aware of them, but understanding and driving towards that middle is where a lot of organizations are going to find their own balance and what's going to make them effective.
Johno, how much redefining is going on currently in the organizations or stakeholders that you are watching a little bit more closely? Because what you're talking about is really an ask for redefinition of what we communicators are doing, or how we are perceived, or how even we see ourselves in the organization. But how much redefining is going on in general in what you're seeing and following across the world?
It varies, you know, I mean, and I don't mean to give an obtuse answer, but that's the reality. You know, there are some organizations that the data that they collected yesterday is obsolete. And there are some organizations that, you know, the data that they've been collecting, because they've been able to build that, because it's an index, and they can start to see some of those trends from previous crises, that they're able to make smarter decisions for what they're doing. So it varies from organization and from region to region. And I would contend that right now, more than ever, hyper-local is more important than ever, because something that is solid and foundational in the larger metropolitan areas is irrelevant in some of the urban areas, based on how they've been hit by the crisis, based on what their recovery from the crisis is. And so, you know, it's no longer even a country to country, a city to city, but city to city can be different. If there were cities, and I'll use the US as an example, New York and Los Angeles previously were pretty consistent. You can get very similar analogies from those two markets. Now it's as if they're totally separate worlds, and it's based on what the recovery looks like, what the situation looks like, what does the lockdown look like. So you can't, it isn't a one communication fits all, but you have to be smarter and more targeted for how you're reaching those audiences. And you can't do that without understanding where they are in the cycle, where they are in that evolution, to be able to be very targeted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that requires good monitoring as well.
Yeah, but now as everybody is more aware to the differences that are going on in the world anyway, maybe this is a good chance for us as communicators to start establishing those new platforms, how we are positioned in the organization and what we are using to sustain that position. Very good. You are the global managing director of AMEC, which is a global expert body for us who are active in measurement and evaluation of communication effectiveness. Tell me, how is AMEC changing? What are you doing differently?
So, we are very focused on what is important to our members. And we've been doing a lot of kind of informal, we call them quarantinis. Depending upon where you are in your day, you can either have tea or a martini, whatever your pleasure. No judgments, be you.
So you're having one big martini right now, huh?
Okay. And so, out of courtesy to the, out of support, sometimes that means I'm doing this at 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes it means 6 a.m. And I, of course, adjust to the local market, whether that's tea or champagne. It's for the work. It's for the work. But there are those great conversations that are churning up both where people are personally, where they are with their family, with their teams, with their staff, with what it has done for their organization, how they've had to quickly adjust and evolve, and where they are in their market. And so, that's really, normally we will have a webinar, we have our newsletter, we have the, annual event, but we have tried to give people a platform of their peers so that as they're doing their own testing, they're able to say, what are you doing? What's working for you? And to really take advantage of that global experience to see if there are elements that they can translate back to their own market.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to my next set of questions, and it was a really good intro. So you're giving this platform. How relevant it is in those days, or how useful it is in those days to look for role models or go copy. On one hand, we have this nationalization trend, almost local is the new global. And on the other hand, we need more than ever, we like to have experiences from other people. So how to find balance between those two, call them extremes?
I think, again, the truth lies in the middle, right? I think there are best practices, and we've just completed our 2020 awards judging, which was amazing. We had the most entries that we've ever had, and it is of global entries and those best practices. And so in August, we'll be posting the case studies of those best practices. And I think, just like anything else, understanding what was the problem that they were trying to tackle, how they went about it, and how that can translate into your region are ways that you can learn from all of those best practices across the board. Because when you understand what are the nuances, what are the similarities, and what are the differences, that can make you smarter on how you can apply those learnings to your own organization, to your clients, to whatever that application is that you're doing. And while it may not be B2B or B2C or, but that's a travel client and you aren't a travel client, there are underlying best practices that translate across all platforms, across all mediums, across all geographies. And so that which can make you better, which you're able to distill down for your organization or for your clients, is what's going to make you a leading authority and make you not even just know those things, but will make you smarter about how you ask questions. And that's that agile learning, right? The more questions we're asking, the more we're challenging the norms of our own organization and our own thinking. That's where we have growth, and that's where we can stimulate change.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that this is the time when people get more, there is more introvertiveness because we are in the lockdown, so more applications for the awards probably is a result of the fact that maybe we have more time to look inside, at least some of us? Comment?
The awards closed before the full lockdowns happened, so that
okay.
looking at the data, that would say that that's not an indicator.
Okay.
And I would say that it's very situational. So many of the people that I know, they are so frustrated. They say, if one more person asks me what I'm doing with all of my extra time, I'm going to scream. Because, where they might not be able to leave their home, they're now full-time tutor. They're still working a full-time job, the majority of them. They're the chef of the house. They're the caretaker for, so it isn't as if they, oh, let me learn another language. It's how do I juggle these 6 extra balls now that I'm trying to manage on top of accelerating at the other things and these other goals that I have. So I think being understanding and being pragmatic of, you know, not being presumptive of where people are in their own evolution, in their own change, but really listening and understanding is one of the best skills that you can carry through this. And, you know, work from home means we are in their home. You now are in my home, you know, and that means I am inviting you into a very personal space, someplace where I have, you know, my own balance. I have my own things. It isn't a sterile environment. And so with that comes some trust that, you know, there is that respect and that deference for all of those things that we have around us. And that means if the family comes running in, if the child comes running in, that, you know, it's a business decision and you need to understand what that is and you need to be empathetic. You know, we talk about measuring emotion and empathetic communication, yet if, you know, your spouse walks into a room, I've seen more than once, they get the dirty look, you know, let's practice what we preach and be empathetic and understanding and always doing our best, no matter what some of those circumstances that might be less than ideal.
Yeah, the communication is a lot about creating the trust, and probably now is the time when we're switching from managing by walking, so you really have easy access to people and almost overlooking what you're doing, to remotely relying on how loyal they are and creating this atmosphere. Good. Before I ask you just a really practical last questions, 1 sentence answer, I am inviting our participants to give us questions or examples or aha moment, whatever you think is relevant, right in the chat. Torej, povabilo vsem, ki nas poslušate, če imate kakršnokoli vprašanje za Johno, komentar v slovenščini ali pa v angleščini, napišite v chat, pa bomo potem tudi to malo od bližje pogledali. Veseli bomo vsakega vašega vložka. Johno, now a couple of really quick ones. Now, Corona is ending in different ways depending on when we are, and it's even different for every organization, it's different for every personal human being. But still, as a communicator with really restricted access to resources right now, still, I want to know which is the first book I should read that will help me become better.
So there are a lot of great books. I would say the one that, and this might be an emotional answer, which should be okay, is The Metrics Man. If you can't count it, then it can't be counted. It was written by a grad student about Don Bartholomew, who is the person who is what our highest award, the Don Bartholomew Award, is named after. We lost Don in 2016. He was a great thinker and a great man. And this is really a combination of feedback from people who worked with him and some of the insights around the Barcelona principles, around the integrated evaluation framework. So all of those pieces with the kind of the backstory with that. So it's one of my favorite reads about measurement.
Okay, I'm writing those things in the chat, so pay attention, and you can either take a screenshot or this is for our participants and save it for later. Which is the first webinar we should attend? There are many available, even too many, so it is very hard to choose. But what is the number one thing we should look for?
So I would say the webinar that you should attend in the future is the AMEC Global Summit, which will be on July 8th and 9th. It will be a series, obviously, of discussions, and then that series will continue through to November. So it's, you know, for that, it will give you kind of the most current best practices, some of them touching on COVID, some of them talking about crisis in general, some of them about those best practices, shameless plug. But if you're just getting started, I would say there is on YouTube, there is probably one of the best is the AMEC Best Practices. That is Paul Hender and Giles Petty from Lewis, talking about some of those best practices, including how to use the integrated evaluation framework, which is a free tool from AMEC that anybody can use when you're setting your objectives, when you're looking at the resources and what some of those outputs are and those outcomes, that you'll be able to navigate that and to complete that PDF for your organization and use that as a guide.
At Clipping, we are promoting AMEC integrated evaluation framework relentlessly, and it's really good even for me to hear that there is a webinar explaining, because it's sometimes quite complex to understand. Really good. Tell me, what is the first newsletter I should subscribe to be updated regularly and not to lose myself in the wealth of all the information there is?
So I would say the Clipping newsletter would be a very good place to start, that gives, again, but very, very local best practices. Okay. Shameless plug again, but it's true. I would say Liam Kelly, who does a newsletter on online about changes in the industry. So you'll see some tech changes that there are. And the measurement standard is a good kind of summary of some of those best practices as well.
Great. Now we have a question from one of our participants, Igor. How will reorganization of work roles impact corporate communications?
I think the silos that we have all grown so used to and the difficulty of gathering information are being lowered, because now more than ever, the internal, hierarchy battles are pushed aside, and survival and thriving on the other side of the global crisis, the first time that we are all facing the same monster, everyone is singularly focused. And so if you're bringing value to the equation, people are more willing to share. We're seeing that across the board. So it's less of, no, that's internal data, no, that's my data. It's how do we create that single index of all of our data and make ourselves better? And someone who's very smart about that can help and drive those efforts. And if you don't have someone who can model data within your communications team, which would be rare, talk to your finance team. They will be more than happy to share someone who can set up some of those pivot tables, who can set up a model. And if you're able to show from paid, earned, shared, and owned media, what those key indicators are and how they change and shift for your organization, they will happily support that effort. And I think smart communicators can help drive that by level setting what that looks like. Make sure that you're using call center data. Make sure that you're using SEO traffic data, and understand where are those arcs that you're able to kind of see some change and some shifts.
Thanks, Johna, and thanks, Igor, again for asking. My last question was, but you already answered, was what do I need to tell my management right now? And what I heard from this conversation, communication deserves a seat at the table, because it is not about spending money anymore, but it's about investing the money really, really well. So let's start telling this immediately. Let's start telling our management that this is the time where organizations need our support immensely and even more than before, because everything is changing and we can help. And let's start grabbing everything there is and try to privatize it even. And I'm a big fan of just wrapping communications around everything. And there are so many things that we can wrap ourselves around. Thanks, Johna. Hvala vsem, ki ste bili z nami na tem prvem takem virtualnem sestanku. Naredili jih bomo še več. Vabim vas, da mi v chat napišete, če ste v tem predavanju imeli kakšen aha moment, če ste slišali kakšno novo informacijo, če ste slišali kaj inspirativnega. Zdaj je čas, da si izmenjamo to v chatu. Vsi imate chat v spodnji orodni vrstici Zoom sestanka. Vsakdo, ki nam kaj pošlje, bo dobrodošel komentar. Nam na Klipingu pa zelo pomemben insight, kako se tega lotevati v prihodnje. Zato, ker se tudi mi učimo in se želimo učiti čim bolj agilno. Res hvala vsem, ki ste bili z nami. Če ima še kdo kakšno vprašanje, zdaj je čas, da nam ga zastavite. Sicer pa bomo zaključili in se vidimo še kdaj v prihodnosti. Johna, I said
Thanks so much, Martina.
Thanks for being with us. Now you deserve this whatever drink you're having. Make it your own. You can pretend you are in Slovenia and now you are entitled to a gin tonic, but if you are in Arizona, tea.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. It was really lovely to spend some time with you. And thank you, Martina, and to Clipping for bringing us into the conversation and being a part of it. It's always wonderful to learn what everyone is doing, and we're so happy to share the time with you.
Thank you, Johna. Have a great day. Vsem hvala, ki ste bili z nami. Imejte se lepo in že kar jutri začnite privatizirati vse te stvari, ki jih je Johna omenjala. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.